Hi there everyone. I was hoping that the day would never come where I had to use a text-to-speech generator again, but here we are. Due to the harsh weather and cold in my area, I deemed it simply would not be safe or reasonable for me to go outside to record my latest video, but I did not want to waste the entire day by not recording anything. So I thought for this video I would present a tier list of my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh series, in honor of its 25th anniversary. I apologize to the Yu-Gi-Oh 7s and Yu-Gi-Oh Go Rush fans out there, but I personally consider those series to be a different game entirely. Rush duels in general feel like a new card game to itself compared to Yu-Gi-Oh, which is why I will not be including them in the rankings. So with that all being said, let us begin. The original Duel Monster series is tricky for me to rank. It holds a very special place in my heart just for the older style of the show and for how it set the bar for the shows that would follow it. I still absolutely love the Duelist Kingdom and Battle City tournaments. However, I felt the show wore out some of its novelty with its quote-unquote filler arcs. Waking of the Dragons I thought was a good addition to the world in it of itself, but I found its lack of impact on the overall story, as well as some smaller parts of the arc didn't really add enough to the characters to make me like this arc more or less than the others. It was a big highlight arc for Joey I felt, but it didn't really entertain me as much as other arcs in the show did. Noah's arc with the Big Five, as well as the arc with Siegfried overall didn't keep my interest as long as I would have liked. It felt like I was watching it out of obligation to Duel Monsters if anything else. For that I have deemed it earns its spot at the top of the A rank. I will only give one of these shows S rank, and I just don't feel like I can give it to Duel Monsters because of its filler arcs that I did not enjoy. GX is in a similar spot because of the nostalgic music and overall feel to the show. However, where Duel Monsters suffered from some filler arcs that I didn't feel need to be in the show, GX falls flat on its protagonist. I do like Jaden as a character, but just the general happy-go-lucky personality he has made it a little hard for me to register the threat of some characters, and made some of its points feel a little more muted. I enjoyed his arc with Yubel near the end of the show as he grew more serious, but the beginning parts of the show made it a little harder for me to really feel the threat of some of these characters the way I should have. For that I grant the series a B rank. 5Ds is a very interesting series. If you asked me to make a list ranking my favorite series literally 2 days earlier, I think I would have put this anime up there with my absolute favorite of the bunch. However, I recently went back and rewatched some of the duels in the show and realized something that tainted my overall love of the show. I know some duels need to end with certain results in order for the plot to move forward in the way the writers have in mind. But the best writers in this show have been able to do that in such a way that the quote-unquote misplays the characters make don't feel as blatant or obvious. Some of the duels in 5Ds feel like they should have very clearly gone the other way but didn't because of plot. The biggest example of this being the duel against Team Unicorn. I do understand the kind of mind game that happened in that last turn and the sense of pride Uzier played on for that turn, but the overall result left me feeling dissatisfied. For that the show earns an A rank. Zexal is also in a funny sort of position for some of its plot. There are many different aspects of the show I found I enjoyed, from the way the number cards look on screen, to the story behind most of them, to the backstories of the Barians and the war against Astral World. What taints this show for me, similar to GX, is humor overall as a character. Seeing his growth as a duelist over the show made me like him a little more than I liked Jaden at the beginning of GX, but to me it feels like his sudden progression into a good duelist happened a little too fast. There were also some aspects of the plot which I feel could have used some more explaining in order for it all to mesh together. There are some choices the writers made that plant seeds early in the show for ideas to blossom later on, but the show overall takes a few leaps in its overall run. I understand that is part of what makes the show unique, but to me it left me asking more questions about the story, which took away from the overall story they wanted to tell and the suspension of disbelief of it. For that I place the series at AC. Part of me wants to put the series at B just for the voice acting and because this is the first series of Yu-Gi-Oh that I ever saw, but compared to the other shows it just does not hold up for me. especially with the shining drawer feeling like a plot device. Arc V also holds a very special place in my heart as a celebration of the Yu-Gi-Oh series as a whole. It brings back many of my favorite characters from different series of the show and integrates them in a way I found compelling and interesting. It introduced a music score which I still quote as one of my all-time favorites of the show, and it had scenes which shook me to my core to watch. The characters were bright and energetic, and that feeling could be felt in every passing moment of the show. It balanced humor and seriousness well in its story, and it didn't make the legendary duelists feel like they were stealing the show from the main cast, which I think is great. What taints this show for me in my eyes is how they handle some of its main cast and their developments. Yu-Gi-Oh overall as a person is probably one of my favorite of all the characters in this franchise for his bright personality, but also his ability to level with people when they are sad. Yu-Gi-Oh proved he can be negative without being overly so, and he swung things around his way when he needed to, which I loved about the show. However, there were parts of his overall story, and the story the show seems to be trying to sell to us, that I just found I didn't buy, at least closer to the end of the show. The duels Yu-Gi-Oh was involved in as well tick me off because of how the plot very blatantly saves Yu-Gi-Oh in most circumstances. Not so much for his card draw as it is for the action cards he uses. I think I could make a video all on its own discussing why I didn't like how action spells were implemented in the show. Then there is Shay, who I thought could have been the most interesting character of them all, with his story rising from the rubble that was Heartland City into a full-on rebel, but it feels like the show simply did not utilize him or his connection to Yu-Gi-Oh enough for my liking. Especially in the arc that should have highlighted him most of all. Shay always found a way to grip my attention with his passionate duels, fueled by the fires of his own rage. It was great to see, but I wish they did more with it than they ended up doing in the show. For these reasons, the show earns its place at the tail end of B. Finally, in our S rank we have Frains. I personally love this show to pieces. The duels all felt interesting to watch from the very start of the show to the finale, and interestingly enough, most of the cards used in that show kept their anime effects when they came over into the real world, which added, for me at least, an extra level of realism to the show. Yusaku's character and the darker undertone of the show overall was absolutely thrilling to be able to watch. The show brilliantly dealt with moral dilemmas and with evaluations of what defines a living thing between human and artificial intelligence in such a way that I found myself absolutely loving the show. While the implementation of skills in the speed duels felt a little plot-driven, having played duel links and speed duels in the real world, the skills feel like a saving grace in the real world just as much as they do in the show. The conclusion of the show also left me bawling my eyes out to see. I remember exactly where I was when the episode aired, and I remember being with my friends to see the conclusion of it. I don't feel the story needed another season to do more with its characters by any means, however I would never say no to going another round with this absolutely amazing cast. For that, this series undeniably earns an S rank in my personal listings. And that concludes my rankings of the franchise's many shows. I hope you all enjoyed it. I of course welcome you all to express your opinions on my rankings in the comments down below. Bear in mind these are just my opinions. I am not saying anything about the show overall, just my general impression of the show after watching it. I am sure in a certain light all these shows are amazing, I just don't feel that way myself. With all that said, thank you all so much for watching. Make sure you stay warm out there, and I will see you all again soon.